Have you ever felt that quiet, heavy sense that you're wasting your life? You keep yourself busy, constantly surrounded by people, goals, and obligations, but deep down, something still feels off. It is like there is a part of you missing, like you were only existing, not truly living. You try to explain it to yourself, maybe calling it stress or anxiety. Perhaps a doctor told you it's depression, handed you a prescription, and told you to take something in the morning and something else before bed. Days turn into months, and your emotions fade behind that chemical calm. But what if that pain inside you wasn't a mistake? What if it wasn't something to suppress, but something to listen to? Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers in psychology, believed that what we often call mental illness isn't always a disorder. Many times it's the mind's desperate attempt to heal itself, a signal that your current life doesn't align with your soul. Maybe you're living a routine that doesn't belong to you. You wake up for a job that drains you. You're in relationships that exhaust you. You chase goals that were never truly yours. Meanwhile, your inner self is silently crying out for freedom, and no one ever taught you how to hear that cry. Instead, they told you to quiet it down, to stay productive, to keep functioning, and to not disturb others. So you smile, pretend, and keep going, while your inner world slowly breaks down. And society applauds you for being so responsible. But Jung didn't believe healing came from denial. For him, real healing begins when you stop avoiding what hurts and start diving into it. It is not about hiding the symptoms. It is about listening to what they were trying to tell you. Jung once said that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. What he meant was simple. You re-suffering because you re-running away from the pain that could actually set you free. The more you run, the more lost you become. This isn't a message for those who just want distraction. It's for the ones who are tired of pretending, for those who feel like they re-drowning but still hold on to a small spark of hope. The hope that there is another way. And there is. But it begins with something hard. Something honest. It starts when you decide to stop running and start listening. Listening to yourself, to your inner voice, to the pain you've been trying to silence with medication, with work, with entertainment, with endless routines. If you've made it this far, maybe you've already realized that the emptiness you feel isn't weakness. It's not laziness. It's the absence of you in your own life. And it's time to change that. You've probably been sad for days, weeks, maybe even months. You go to the doctor. You sit there trying to explain the sleepless nights, the chest tightness, that strange feeling that you don't belong anywhere. Maybe you talk about how you feel disconnected from everything, even from yourself. The doctor listens for a few minutes, types something on a computer, and gives you a label. It's anxiety. Then comes the prescription. You leave the clinic holding a piece of paper that turns your pain into a chemical problem. A few pills a day to keep you functioning. What was once an existential cry becomes a medical number on a label. But no one tells you that this kind of treatment isn't made to heal your soul. It's made to keep you functional. The logic is simple. Society needs you to keep working, buying, producing, surviving. Medication allows you to bear what feels unbearable. It helps you get through the day, but it doesn't fix the root cause. That's why Jung called this a trap. He believed that most modern emotional problems don't come from a broken brain. They come from a broken connection between the life you live and the life you meant to live. When you ignore your true calling, your authentic impulses, and your inner truth, your soul starts to grow sick. And because your soul has no physical voice, it speaks through the body, through anxiety, panic, sadness, and emptiness. Instead of listening, we silence it. We were taught to numb the pain as fast as possible, to get back to normal. But what is normal really? Is it the job you hate but can't leave? The relationship that drains you but looks perfect on Instagram? The endless scroll of distractions that fill your days but leave you feeling empty? That kind of normal isn't living. It's surviving. The anxiety you feel is not a flaw. It's your soul trying to tell you, this life doesn't belong to you. And the longer you ignore it, the louder that voice becomes. But the system always has a new pill, a new label, a new way to make you quiet again. The more you adapt to this pattern, the further you drift from who you really are, until one day you don't feel much of anything. Not pain, not joy, not passion. Just that dull numbness we call adult life. Jung warned that when we treat symptoms without understanding their cause, we create only the illusion of healing. You might look better on the outside, working, smiling, doing all the right thing, but inside, you remain lost. And the longer this goes on, the more painful the collapse will be. Because you can't escape your inner self forever. One way or another, your soul will demand attention, maybe through burnout, emotional breakdowns, or that deep emptiness nothing seems to fill. The truth is, this obsession with medicating emotions is just a reflection of something deeper, a culture terrified of pain, a world that sees suffering as something to be avoided instead of something to be understood. For Jung, pain wasn't the end, it was the beginning. It was the start of a transformation. He called it the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming your true self. But modern society calls every discomfort a disorder, and by running from pain, we run from growth. So we need to ask, how many people are being silenced by treatments that only cover up what's real? How many lives are being wasted for the sake of appearing stable? How many journeys have been stopped before they even began because we were too afraid to feel? To start finding answers, we have to look deeper, not just inside the mind, but at the world shaping it. The modern environment we live in, the culture that defines our identity, the system that keeps us disconnected. Maybe the real problem isn't you. Maybe it's the world that taught you to ignore yourself. And that's where we continue. Now think about it. Why are so many people emotionally lost today, even surrounded by comfort, technology, and freedom? We've never had this much access to entertainment, knowledge, or opportunity. And yet, we've never felt so empty inside. The root of this pain isn't only in the mind. It's in the culture that molds it. Jung saw this clearly. He believed the problem wasn't just personal. It was cultural, structural, collective. We live in a society obsessed with how things look rather than what they mean. We praise productivity but forget purpose. From childhood, we're given a script to follow. Study hard, get a safe job, make money, stay busy, post happy photos, and never show weakness. We grow up learning how to please, compete, and achieve. But no one ever teaches us how to listen to ourselves. No one tells us to ask, what really makes my life worth living? This lack of meaning isn't an accident. It's designed. We've been conditioned to believe our worth comes from outside, from our titles, income, achievements, or approval from others. But Jung warned that this is one of the most dangerous lies we can believe. Because when your sense of self depends on what's outside of you, you will always be fragile. You'll always be chasing validation. And while doing so, you'll lose connection with your true self, with your unconscious, your instincts, your inner nature. That's how emptiness slowly begins to grow. You start checking all the boxes. You do everything right, but it still feels wrong. You have the job, the house, the routine, but it feels like someone else's life. You can't explain it, but you feel hollow inside. What you're feeling isn't weakness. It's disconnection. Disconnection from what's real, raw, and spontaneous inside you. And according to Jung, this disconnection is the root of most deep psychological suffering. But here's the painful truth. Society doesn't want you to see this. Because disconnected people are easier to control. They consume more. They question less. They stay busy, tired, and distracted. They're useful, predictable, obedient. And when they finally collapse under the weight of their own emptiness, the system gives them another quick fix. A new distraction, a new diagnosis, a new pill. Never the truth. Jung said that real healing only begins when you face the world that broke you. When you understand the invisible forces that shaped you, the rules you followed without question, and the parts of yourself you sacrificed to be accepted. That process hurts, deeply, because it means admitting that you've been living someone else's idea of life. It means seeing how much of yourself you've lost trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for you. But as painful as it is, This is the only real way out. Because only when you understand where your emptiness comes from, can you begin to fill it with truth. And that journey, the process of reconnecting with your real self, is what Jung called individuation. It's the deep inner work of becoming whole again, of bringing together all the parts you've hidden, rejected, or forgotten. It's the true path to healing. But this path isn't easy. It requires courage, patience, and a willingness to see what you've been avoiding for years. It asks you to face your fears, your wounds, your contradictions. And Jung said that this path starts with one powerful moment. The moment when you can no longer ignore your pain. When your social mask becomes too heavy to wear. When you finally see that you've been living as only a fragment of who you truly are. That's where the real journey begins. The journey of individuation. It's not some quick self-help routine or a few positive habits. It's something much deeper. The process of becoming your authentic self. Individuation is when you stop being a reflection of other people's expectations and start being guided by your inner truth. It's when you stop performing for the world and start listening to your own soul. But this process isn't comfortable. It forces you to look at what you've buried inside, the fears, the desires, the memories you've tried to forget. Jung called this the personal unconscious, the hidden world within you that holds all your unhealed parts. Individuation begins when you stop running from those parts and start integrating them, one by one. And yet that's only the beginning. Because the most difficult step of all, the one Jung said every person must face eventually, is the encounter with the shadow. That dark, wild, chaotic side of you that you've been taught to hide your entire life. Have you ever wondered why the feelings you hide always find a way to return? The anger you never expressed, the envy you deny, the parts of yourself you try to bury, they don't disappear. They wait. Jung once said, "Those who look outside dream, but those who look inside awaken." Looking inside means facing yourself without masks, without excuses, without pretending to be better than you are. It means staring at your own shadow, the version of you that holds everything you don't want to admit, and accepting that it's still you. This is not about being good or bad. It's about being real, because the shadow you ignore ends up controlling you, but the shadow you understand becomes your strength. When you stop fighting yourself and start listening, you begin to reclaim the energy that was locked away. That's what Jung called individuation, the journey of becoming whole again. It's when you reconnect with the deepest part of your being, the center of your mind and spirit, and realize that you were never broken, only divided. The world constantly tells you to improve, to fix yourself, to chase perfection. Jung believed the opposite. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be whole. You don't need to fit in. You need to be free. True healing doesn't mean becoming who the world wants you to be. It means aligning your inner world with who you truly are. This process can feel lonely and hard. It forces you to let go of illusions and face silence. But it's also the only path that brings real meaning, because once you start living from your inner truth, everything changes. Your choices, your relationships, even the way you suffer. Pain stops being punishment and becomes a signal, guiding you toward transformation. But then comes the question, why don't most people take this journey? Why do so many keep repeating the same empty patterns, avoiding the depth of their own soul? The answer is hidden in the biggest illness of our time, the loss of meaning. We live surrounded by noise, distraction, and ambition, yet inside people feel hollow. So many appear fine on the outside but feel nothing inside. Jung said that much of modern suffering comes from this emptiness, from living a life disconnected from purpose. And by purpose, he didn't mean some grand mission or a cosmic plan. He meant something simple, yet profound. Living in harmony with your truth, doing what feels authentic, building a life that reflects who you are instead of who you are told to be. He noticed that when people found meaning, their pain began to fade. Not because they took medicine or became successful, but because they found a why. You can endure almost anything if you have a reason to live. But without meaning, even pleasure feels boring. Achievements lose their flavor. And that's what so many are feeling today. Tired, not from work, but from emptiness. Overloaded with tasks, yet starving for direction. Busy all the time, yet unsure why. Humans need to feel that their existence matters. They need to know they belong to something greater than routine, that their life has weight and consequence. When they lose this, they collapse inside. Suffering turns into confusion. The mind becomes restless, and the heart feels lost. The soul starts screaming for meaning, but the world only offers distractions. Endless scrolling, entertainment, self-help slogans, quick-fix motivation. None of that fills the inner void. Because the truth is, what people crave cannot be bought or performed. It must be discovered. Many people are not really living their own lives. They're living someone else's expectations. They follow paths that please others but betray their inner voice. They choose jobs that make money but kill their spirit. They stay in relationships that drain them, live in places that suffocate them, follow routines that slowly erase who they are. The body reacts. Tension, fatigue, anxiety. The mind becomes numb. The soul retreats. There is no medicine for a meaningless life, because what's missing isn't chemicals, it's direction. What's missing isn't dopamine, it's identity. And this is where Jung's message becomes urgent. He didn't want people to just function. He wanted them to wake up, to live with authenticity and courage, to say, "This life is not mine, and I refuse to keep living like this." But how can you rebuild meaning in a world that keeps pulling you away from yourself? Jung's answer was simple yet deep. Reconnect with the unconscious. Because inside the forgotten parts of you lies the key to your purpose. The unconscious is not just a storage of trauma or old memories. It's a living space, a hidden world full of symbols, emotions, and truths you've ignored. Every part of yourself that you denied, the emotions you repressed, the fears you buried, the desires you shamed, all live there, waiting for your attention. And if you don't face them, they begin to shape your life from the shadows. Jung said, "What you do not bring to consciousness returns as fate." That means, what you ignore comes back disguised as destiny. You might think you just have bad luck in relationships, but maybe you're repeating the same emotional pattern. You might think you're being sabotaged at work, but maybe deep down you fear success. You might think life is unfair, but maybe old wounds are still steering your behavior. The unconscious acts like a mirror, showing you not who you want to be, but who you really are. That's why it's uncomfortable. It strips away illusions. It reveals the masks you built to survive. It shows you that control is an illusion, and that your inner world is far more complex than you imagined. But here's the paradox. Healing begins exactly where fear starts. The moment you stop denying your darkness and start understanding it, you begin to regain control. The more you hide from your inner world, the more it rules you. But when you face it, you start to become whole. Jung called this expansion of consciousness. When you stop running and start listening. The unconscious doesn't speak in words. It speaks in symbols, dreams, sensations, and emotions. It shows itself through images, sudden feelings, and creative impulses. That's why practices like silence, journaling, art, or meditation can help. They open a door between the conscious and unconscious mind. You begin to notice the small signals. The things that once seemed random now carry meaning. You start to understand your emotions instead of escaping them. And that's where real healing begins. The moment you start listening to what's inside, something powerful happens. Clarity. You begin to understand why you react the way you do, why you chase certain things, why some pain keeps returning. You stop being a victim of your story and become the author of it. Because as long as you're unaware of what lives within you, you remain a prisoner. To other people, to old pain, to expectations, to fear. But when you finally face yourself, you start breaking those chains. You realize that anxiety isn't always your enemy. It's a messenger. Sadness isn't weakness. It's a sign that something inside is ready to change. This journey takes time. It's not quick or easy. It requires silence, honesty, and courage. It demands that you stop living on the surface and start exploring the depths. But it is the only path that leads to authenticity, the only way to live as your true self. When you live from that place, you no longer react blindly. You create consciously. You stop being a puppet of old patterns and become the sculptor of your own life. And now that you understand how deeply your unconscious shapes you, there is one final question to ask. What is really stopping you from beginning this journey? Why, even after knowing all this, do so many people stay stuck in meaningless lives, afraid to change? The answer is fear. Fear of losing what's familiar, even if it's destroying you. Fear of letting go of identities that no longer serve you. Fear of stepping into the unknown. But the truth is, the life you want lives on the other side of that fear. There comes a moment when you must choose, not just any choice, but the choice. The one that separates who you are from who you've been pretending to be. The choice between living asleep or waking up. Between surviving or truly existing. Most people never make that choice. They keep living in patterns that numb them. They keep chasing comfort over truth. They trade their soul for stability. But there are a few who dare, who decide to stop running and face themselves. And that decision changes everything. If you're still listening, it's not by chance. Something inside you is awakening. Maybe it's a whisper, maybe it's a scream. But it's there, a voice that refuses to die. It is the voice of the part of you that knows life isn't just about work, obligations, or social validation. It's the part that remembers there's more, depth, passion, meaning, freedom. But you'll only find it if you walk toward yourself. Jung once said that the greatest privilege of life is to become who you really are. But that's also the most avoided journey, because it requires courage. It demands that you let go of comfort, that you face your fears, that you question everything you've been told. It's not an easy road. It hurts. It breaks illusions. It forces you to change. But it's sacred because it's real, because it transforms you from the inside out. Most people will keep living on autopilot, distracted, numb, chasing more things while feeling less alive. They'll hide behind screens, goals, possessions, and smiles. But you don't have to. You can decide to wake up. You can decide that your life is too precious to waste on noise. You can choose to stop being a reflection of the world and start being a reflection of your truth. Yes, it will hurt. Growth always does. You'll lose people. You'll face confusion. You'll have moments of doubt. But you'll also feel something far more powerful. Freedom. Real freedom. The kind that comes from living in alignment with yourself. When you reach that point, no one can shake you. You stop asking for permission. You stop comparing. You stop trying to please people who never understood you. You start living with purpose, not pressure. So now ask yourself, what do you need to let go of to begin living fully? What lie are you still holding on to that keeps you asleep? Write it down. Even a single word, a sentence, a thought, it matters. Because the moment you put it into words, you've already stepped out of numbness. You've already begun your awakening. And if this message stirred something inside you, if it touched a wound or awakened a spark, then don't stop here. You've already started the journey. Keep going. Watch the next chapter. Not because it's just another video, but because you owe it to yourself to go deeper. To keep walking toward the life that is waiting for you. The life that finally feels like your own.